So when you look at the benefits of exercise, the benefits of physical activity, there's a point at which there are major improvements in your quality of life. You're preventing injury, you're preventing circulatory problems, right? There's a degree of activity that's super important. And then there's a point at which that activity can actually be harmful, degrading your joints. But those are when you do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again without variation. So when I go over the activities and exercises, what we're really wanting to encourage is variety. And it needs to be stimulating the system that the human body evolved to be over thousands of years. So how can we stimulate running from a bear? Right? How do you climbing a tree? Just the squatting to go to the bathroom. Well, you have to try to do it. You don't necessarily have to go to the bathroom while you're squatting in the gym, but try to get your butt to the ground. You've got good flexibility when you do squats. We're going to go over that more on Wednesday when I talk about ancient exercise and exercises that people have been doing for thousands of years. But today we're basically going to encourage you to really prioritize physical activity given the mental health ability if you have it, because it's hard if you're not psychologically in a good place because your energy is being devoted to securing other things. Okay, so quickly we're going to go through briefly what we went over. There's a difference between physical activity and exercise. Those are two different things. Physical activity is what you do daily. Exercise is defined. It is intentional pushing yourself, stretching your limits, lifting heavier, cardiovascularly, running harder, putting yourself in discomfort. That's exercise. Ultimately, the body is very elastic and it wants to adapt. So law of adaptation being, if you don't do anything, your body gets weaker. It kind of goes to what you're demanding it to do, right? So if you're sitting, your body becomes tight in areas that make it look like you're sitting when you stand. So for example, this is sitting posture for a lot of people. Again, we're going to go over posture next week, but your body will adapt to what you tell it to do. So exercise is trying to expand on your body's capacity to some degree. So I need you to remember this because I will do a quick quiz on Wednesday with this information. It's very simple. Moderate, intense physical activity, 150 to 300 minutes of cumulative a week. So that's like walking really hard across campus. Okay. So remember that. How much moderate intensity physical activity do you need in a week? That's going to be the option you want to choose, 150 to 300 minutes per week. How about vigorous intensity? So this is this would be like going hiking to Table Rock, right? Not running, hiking to Table Rock. That going up to Table Rock is a little harder, going uphill. That's an example, vigorous activity, 75 to 150 minutes a week. Now let's get to vigorous intensity. So we're talking now, and I should put exercise right here. We're running, trying to get your heart rate pretty high up there. Sweating, right? Where you're taxing your body, 75 to 300 minutes a week combined. This is combination. Okay. And weight training twice a week is ideal. So that would be taking weight, pushing it above your head, pulling weight, squatting, lunging, twisting, right? What you're trying to do with weight training is hit your body in different angles and make it so that it's like laborious. Okay, so we're not looking to do 20 minutes of rowing. That's cardiovascular. If you can last 20 minutes, it's not weight training. We're talking a minute, right? Very short, high intense weights. So most Americans are aware they need physical activity. They know the benefits, but yet only 20.5% actually hit the numbers that I just told you, 150 to 300 of just moderate physical activity. And this has everything to do with the fact that our lifestyles don't necessarily encourage taking the time, right? I don't know if you guys, I know for me, I cannot devote, I have to take my dog for a walk and that takes time, right? And I'll try to jog and walk and jog and walk. But I have so much reading to do that I can't listen on Audible because it's research, published research. There's no Audible for published research that I know of. So when am I going to get it in? If I take the dogs out, I've already taken them out for about 45 minutes today. I'm going to have to try to squeeze in another 45 minutes so that they can get the accumulated activity that their bodies need, right? So how am I going to get what my body needs? So I'm kind of using that time, which means I'm not getting enough diverse activity, right? So I do have my clients, so I have to demonstrate almost everything that I have them do. So I think today I might have demonstrated, I did lateral lunges with people. I might have demonstrated, I don't know, maybe 6 of these, done 6 of those. I help people stretch out, so I'm moving, but that's not the same as if I were to be doing training myself. When am I going to get that done? I got to write a paper, which means I'm sitting. So this is just the way we live. Like I don't necessarily have to go get a horse with its saddle, got to go ride my horse to get the mail and come back. You know, those are all activities that we no longer have to do. So ideally, if you know that you're busy, you have a job, you've got shit you need to do, ride your bike to school if you can. Try to build it in. At different times in my life, I have used, for example, I lived like, when I was living in California, I was in Capitola and I was working at the 24-hour fitness in Santa Cruz, and it was a 3-mile drive along the coast, and I would run it. I'd run there, train people, run home. I didn't have kids. This was right after graduation, so I might have been 23, 22. So I built it in because I knew I didn't want to stay at the gym after training. I did not want to get on a damn treadmill. So I ran from it into work. I've done that multiple times, given the option. I used to live off of Division and Boise Avenue. My training facility was downtown. That's about a mile. I would run to work, train people, run back. So it kind of built it into my day if you have the luxury, right? If it's safe. So something I just said to you seems simple, right? But what if you live in a not safe environment? Well, you're gonna have to figure it out. It's a privilege to be able to live in an environment where I could have run, where I didn't have any safety issues. So now I'm just thinking, let's keep on going. I gotta get through that. We've seen this. This is physical activity. No, you're not meeting those minimums, you are inactive. Sedentary means you spend a lot of time reclining. So you're not actually upright against gravity. So cardiovascular, muscular strength, endurance, and flexibility. So let's move through the benefits. So what the brain is benefited by activity because it reduces stress and improves mood, assuming you're not overwhelmed and you have enough sleep. Decreases risk of depression. I think we talked about this last time, where it can help if you are not in, let's say, apathy depression. Someone who might be dealing with an acute hardship where the depression is linked to a hardship like a breakup, a divorce, a loss. It can really be helpful in those situations because you're under, you know, your body is looking to have an outlet. Let's say that you are struggling with more intense depression that feels inescapable, feels like terror, feels like extreme darkness. the exercise might not be as effective. In fact, telling someone to exercise in that state of mind might actually promote or trigger some sense of internal shame and guilt that they haven't been exercising. So you got to be really careful with who you recommend exercise to. I know for me, working with people that were morbidly obese, also on the anorexic side of the scale or bulimic side of the scale, recommending exercise just added, it was basically, they feel bad already about not exercising. So by me saying you should exercise, it's just like guilt. And it's not that I'm doing that to them. It's their own beliefs about their laziness, but internalized stigma about their body issues is the problem. It's not me, it's not my recommendation. But knowing that, what I would do is I would say, hey, if you have the energy, 10 minutes would make a big difference. Make it reachable. You have no idea how many people gave me feedback around the fact that I was giving them something that was just small. I had a woman who was over 400 pounds that I worked with over 2 years. And I would have loved to have said, you need to get a commercial grade treadmill, because that's what you're going to need for your weight and your size and the stability. I would never say that to her. I said, go get those cute the pedal that you can use sitting. That will help your lymphedema and the fact that she had all this circulatory problems in her legs. What could I recommend that wouldn't, impact the shame she already had about her whole body? So again, depression is something that you want to understand a little bit better before you're like, if you just worked out, you'd feel so much better, because that is just very ignorant. It can decrease anxiety, and there's research around the cortisol impact, because exercise at higher intensities actually stimulate sympathetic nervous system, which stimulates the stress response, which ultimately helps energize the body to be able to handle higher levels of exercise. So it can really promote better performance for people. You need to be enough stimulated that it can actually improve your performance. So someone in anxiety, when you have them exercise, it tells the brain that you did flee, that you fought, right? So you're basically giving the feedback to say, hey, we did beat that thing up, and I went and ran from the bear. And then it actually can have a calming effect. It doesn't improve your concentration, it increases oxygen and nutrients to the brain. It basically says to your brain, hey, there is shit that needs to be done. I need you to help me to get the energy to do it. So exercise trains the brain and trains your body to have more energy, even though it's depleting as well. And it improves cognitive function, and this is a real thing. Okay, so let's look at the lungs. Respiratory capacity improves. So this is the, I'll ask the question in a little bit, but respiratory capacity means that you have the ability to breathe in more air. So my question to you, and I want to know anybody who might have the answer, is with cardiovascular exercise and training, even to high degrees, do the lungs actually improve their capacity to breathe in and out with cardiovascular exercise? Anybody know the answer to that? Talking about the lung function. Does lung function really improve with higher levels of cardiovascular exercise? Who says yes? Who says no? The answer is no. Good job. The diaphragm gets bigger and better. The muscle that actually allows the lungs to pull air in gets bigger and stronger. What does improve is the reception from the alveoli. I almost said areolas. The alveoli, it's better transferred into your bloodstream, but your lungs actually don't necessarily get better. It's everything else around it. Learn that this year. Improve strength of the muscles used. the diaphragm, internal and external costal muscles. So think of your ribs, they go all the way around into the spine here. So the ability for your ribs to open and collapse improves the function of your lung. It's not the actual lungs that change, it's everything around the lungs that get better. So when people don't breathe in deeply, it's common for someone with rounded posture like this to not be able to breathe in deeply. Imagine what's going on with my ribs here. Can I open them up very big? So you're limiting the capacity for the lungs to actually expand with your diaphragm, right? So by having good posture, my ribs are now opened in the front, they can function in the back, and my lungs actually have more room and muscles to work for them. And there's improved ability to extract the oxygen. So just so you know, I'd love to say that the lungs for people who are super fit that way improve, but actually they don't. It's the same. Everything else improves, making the lungs more effective. And so with cardiovascular exercise, and this is sustained, so the goal is to get past the first 3 minutes. So the first 3 minutes when you're doing cardiovascular exercise, let's just say you're cross-country skiing. Your body's trying to find an equilibrium. So it takes about 3 minutes to hit a steady state. The first 3 minutes of your cardiovascular exercise is glycolysis. You're using, blood sugar, you're using some glycogen, and then it takes about 3 minutes to effectively get your body to fuel with fat over a longer period of time. And of course, those of you who are in kinesiology, who've taken physiology, it's about 60% of your VO2 max is where you're going to have the most effective fat utilization. That means you're probably not going to be the fastest runner or the most competitive athlete. But again, so when you start on a treadmill or on any piece of machinery, a bike, I don't care what it is, just know, get past the first 3 minutes and you're going to start noticing it gets real simple and easy. The breathing gets more efficient. Everything starts to have a tempo. Energy fueling mechanisms start to kick in. So exercise improves your rate of metabolism. Your liver and your pancreas are very big in terms of glycogen as well as blood sugar regulation. So you're effectively using some of these stores when you exercise, which means that your turnover in your storage is better. So these organs actually function better when you exercise. You reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. Type 2 diabetes is, I have a propensity to type 2 diabetes. Have I told you guys that before? I do. In fact, the last time I got checked, my A1Cs, which is a marker for diabetes, was on the edge, and so was my fasting blood sugar. I have a propensity to have type 2 diabetes, and I'm like 46. I mean, none of the criteria other than my dad, my uncle, my grandma, and family history is there. And it's usually coordinated with higher stress levels for me. So, which is understandable. Everybody on some level has higher blood sugar when they're stressed. That's what's supposed to happen. Your body's primed to fight or flight. So I just so happen to have a little bit more sensitive, and I'm highly active, right? I'm a very active individual, still have a risk for it. So this is generalizing when they say things like this, because you can get super fit people and they're high risk for type 2 diabetes. Did you know that if you were to eliminate all sugar from your diet, that you're more sensitive to type 2 diabetes? Because you're untraining your body to handle it. So you become highly sensitive to it. So there's a lot of different reasons for why someone's sensitive to type 2 diabetes. It doesn't always have to be you're sedentary. It just so happens that many people who are sedentary, highly stressed, you pair those two together, you're going to have higher blood sugar over long periods of time. And this can actually damage your pancreas to some degree. And if your pancreas gets damaged, then you might not be able to recover from that. But most people who have type 2 diabetes, it can be to some degree reduced. Metabolic syndrome, any of you heard of metabolic syndrome? It's the pairing of obesity, type 2 diabetes, hormonal issues. And your colon, decreased risk of colon cancer. Why do you guys think that exercise would decrease someone's risk of colon cancer? What do you think it is? Anybody have a guess what it is about exercise that would be beneficial to your colon? You guys know where your colon is? Basically the big tube that exits out your sphincter and your waste goes out your butthole. So it's the area, the colon is the area of from the large intestine to your poop hole, your butthole. Why would exercise be good for that? And anybody have a guess? What does exercise do? Okay, well, okay. Does anybody? Yes. That's one thing.
Better at cleaning stuff out.
Yeah, you are kind of extracting from your sweat and your kidneys different biological kind of free radicals. Those are all great answers, but I want you to think about how peristalsis works. You know, again, the muscle contracting and actual movement of your guts, moving your body, stimulates peristalsis as well. So someone who's more active in the hips, in the gut, someone who's moving their core body is actually stimulating poop, going poop. So it can also be a mechanical help to getting waste out of your system. Blood vessels, increases levels of good cholesterol. We will go over this because I went out of order, but cholesterol. You want cholesterol because cholesterol is very helpful in cell membrane health. We'll go into this probably the end of next week. Lowers your resting blood pressure. And that is actually chemically induced, decreases your risk of arteriosclerosis and improves circulation. I'm going to go over this next week when we go over heart disease more in depth. So just know exercise actually can stimulate, there's so much. I mean, this is such a short list of what actually happens with your blood vessels and the ability for your muscles to use the oxygen and pull oxygen from your veins, your arteries, and then into the veins, what's called your AVO2 difference. Have any of you heard of that? Atrial venal difference. How much oxygen is delivered, how much gets extracted, and then what comes into the veins. So what's in the arteries versus the veins tells us how efficient and effective your body is at using that oxygen. And people who are more in shape for exercise have better, the diffusion of that oxygen into the muscles is way better. So they can go longer, they can do more. And anyways, so this is all very good. Okay. Breast health reduces the risk of breast cancer in women. I don't know why, besides I assume it has everything to do with moving that those lymph nodes in the chest. I mean, that might sound really ridiculous. Anybody else here know or read anything about breast cancer and exercise? Okay, well, apparently.
Well, aren't breasts just mainly made out of fat?
Well, there are ducts, milk ducts, mammary glands, there's glands in there. There's all sorts of lymph nodes up in here. And the lymph system is really important for moving toxins through and out of the body. It could be from a lot of different reasons. It could be stress. I mean, women who exercise may not have the same, may be functioning at a less stress level, so they can, do more exercise. Could be a combination of a lot of things. I don't know. This would be interesting to look into what it is about exercise that makes you at less risk. My assumption is it's, again, moving of the lymphatic system would be my guess.
It says that it lowers estrogen.
Ah, see, look at you. Well, and we need estrogen, that's interesting. So exercise lowers estrogen levels, what does it do to your testosterone? I know it makes it go up a little bit. Epinephrine, norepinephrine. Okay. And that might depend on how much body fat you have, because body fat is such an important aspect of hormone regulation, especially for women. Going to the heart, it decreases your risk of heart disease. This has everything to do with plaque buildup in the arteries. Again, we'll go over this more next week when we talk about the heart disease. Very interesting lecture because I go into how that plaque builds up and what it actually does. And so if this is your, I think this is your aorta. No, I don't know. What do you guys, what is this and what are these two? I think this is your aorta. Anyway, so if there's plaque built up in the blood flowing out, that's where the problem typically is. There's the inside of the heart, and then there's blood going from the right to the left side, and then there's blood going from the left side out to the body. If you have a blockage, the heart can lose oxygen inside the heart, which means it can't pump, which means your body doesn't get adequate blood flow, adequate oxygen. And so someone who's got clogged arteries, or at least a clogged within the heart, they're tired, super tired, they're exhausted. I mean, it's hard to walk across a room without being exhausted because their heart is not providing adequate oxygen to feed the muscles. So someone who has these issues are very tired. So exercise can be very impactful. Obviously, we're not talking acute. Let's just say my father just had a quadruple bypass. They think it's associated to Agent Orange from Vietnam. He did cardiovascular exercise his whole life. Like he would get up and do the Nordic track, and he had a rowing machine. And I remember all through high school, he is super cardiovascularly in shape. And even though he was doing all of that, he still ended up with quadruple bypass because of chemicals that were really commonly used in Vietnam. So ideally, it takes time for plaque to build up in your arteries. It takes time. It's a chronic problem. It's not like a random, all of a sudden you gain fat in your heart. So exercise can be huge in terms of when you are consistent for long periods of time. You are reducing your risk of having these issues substantially. So not only does it strengthen the heart, but it actually increases the volume of blood pumped by the heart, which is actually a very significant indicator of how in shape you are. So how many of you know how to do your resting heart rate? You guys know how to do it? Okay, so resting heart rate I'm gonna just throw some numbers out. I'm not gonna be exact. Someone can look it up, but typical resting heart rate is probably around 70. When you wake up in the morning, most people, it would be in the 60s. So daily resting heart rate would be like, I don't know, 60 to 70, I would say. The stronger your heart is, and the more blood that pumps out with each beat means that your resting heart rate is lower. So someone who is in shape, their heart beats the same amount of blood, like 2 liters, same amount, right? They don't necessarily have more blood, but they're pumping out the same amount of blood per minute with less heartbeats because their heart is just like shoving that blood out at a much higher rate. So the goal would be that your resting heart rate is actually lower, low 60s into your 50s. That's something I compete with my husband on all the time. So we'll randomly check our resting heart rate, and whoever is lower is the winner. Mine's pretty amazing. Yeah. Okay, the bones. Bones are kind of important. This is what keeps us upright and being able to handle gravity. Gravity is a big deal. It is constantly pushing us onto this floor. When you lay on the ground, on your back, your spine is actually getting pressed into the ground. So someone who has kyphosis or rounding and they're stuck this way, if they lay on the ground, they look like this. Because they're stuck. Right? So one of the things you can do for people who have postural issues is having them lay on the ground actually improves the thoracic bone structure. So when you think about what gravity is doing, the bones are what we have to keep us capable of handling that pressure. So if you don't move, you don't necessarily have good structural alignment. We're going to go into that on Monday next week. And your bones become weaker and more hollow. So when you exercise, you're putting more pressure on your bones. When you run, the amount of strain in the hips, knees, and feet skyrockets. That actually improves the bone density of your hips. So for example, if you are a cyclist, you are prone to having osteoporosis in your hips because when you're on a bike sitting, you are not stressing your hip bones at all. Swimmers tend to have an issue with osteoporosis because they spend a lot of that activity buoyant with less gravity in water. So being able to be diverse in your exercise would be important, especially for someone who is let's say, a competitive cyclist. They would need to do a lot of different leg strengthening, hip strengthening exercises to maintain their bone health. There's more to that, why they would be prone to osteoporosis, especially at young ages. A lot of that has to do with the high level of nutritional, if they don't eat adequately, the nutritional pull from the bones to take over. And even then, so for example, you might have, when they do bone scans, anybody here had a bone scan done? What did they measure? Of what? Your wrists, your hips, and your mid-spine, those three areas, or do they do?
It was, I don't know, it was like the same body.
Yeah, typically what they're looking at are bone sockets, wrists, and thoracic vertebrae. That's typically, if those are depleted of bone, you're probably having issues elsewhere. So exercise strengthens and maintains your bone density, and it also decreases your risk of osteoporosis. Again, assuming that you are actually loading the bones. Joint health, this is where a lot of Americans in general have a lot of joint pain. So when I'm showing you an interesting joint. So this would be the sacroiliac joint. That's a joint. The bone socket, right? Here's the head of the femur. So this is your femur. The head is inside, it's actually attached in the pelvis in a socket like this. Your knees, ankles, shoulders. So each joint has the ability to move. So for example, this bone right here doesn't actually have any mobile points, but the top and the bottom end do. Right? So if your femur moves, you're in trouble, it's broken. Right? It's just a solid stick. Think of it that way. So it moves on this end and this end of the stick. Right? So inside this is a joint, and then you have tongue and groove joint at the knee. And so there's all this tissue, right? Soft tissue that cushions so the bones don't hit bone. Ideally, you do not have bone on bone, because that's just grinding it away, right? Think of like your tires. What happens over time is your tires wear just because of gravity and friction. Your joints are the same. Over time, they can wear, especially if you overwear one side more than the other. So I would use for example, my hips. So ideally, your hips are square in the center, and we have the ability, so here's what I'm doing with this hip, I'm going out, external rotation, internal rotation, right? So let's say I run, so ideally, you're square in the hips with your foot facing forward. Again, I'll go over more of this in our posture class. If my foot's forward, that is square in the socket. If I externally rotate, I am now kind of taking this and pushing on the back side of the socket, right? So if you do this yourself, you'll feel a pinch back here once you get to where the socket won't move anymore. Imagine I run long distance with my feet turned out. What can happen inside the socket over time? It might be super worn out. Eventually, I might have bone on bone right back in here. So where your bones are matters in the joint for long-term health. So when you work your joints, you improve their range of motion, right? So use your ankles, for example, there's a point of dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. The ability for you to plantar flex, or excuse me, dorsiflex, that pull up, allows me to have a better heel strike. So the stress from my heel, knee to hip is better because I can pull my toe up like that, right? If you don't have the flexibility in the heel, you might have more of a flat foot strike, right? That might create a little bit more drag to the kneecap. So again, gravity is kind of a big deal, and being able to move your joints properly reduces the wear and tear of your joints over time. Exercise improves the range of motion, which is really good for preventing joint wear and tear, and which reduces pain and swelling and arthritis. I'm 46, and these are issues for me because I was a college athlete that overused my body. I have just for me, you know, it's all about me here. This area and this area look like an 80-year-old in my body. Right here. Not good. And that has everything to do with playing volleyball, long jump, high jump, javelin. What else did I do? Hurdles. I did the heptathlon. And then on top of that, I had an exercise problem as an eating disorder, right? So I would do on top of all my training an extreme amount of Stairmaster to try to burn as many calories as I could. Overuse in those joints degrade, just like your tires do. You got to replace your tires, and hopefully I don't ever have to replace a disc, but I was told at 26 that these discs, if I were 80, should have been taken out. So I try to not do a ton that overloads my lower back. I have to work on my posture all the time. Joint health also improves stability. So not just range of motion, but my ability to hold that position. And that has everything to do with muscles as well, which is why we're going into the muscles. So your muscles are what moves your joints. Your bones are useless without muscles. I want you to think of a puppet, a wooden puppet with strings attached to the arms and the limbs and the hands. You guys have that vision in your mind? Your muscles are your puppet strings. So for example, here's the deltoid, right? The deltoid goes across the clavicle. Excuse me, it attaches over here, it doesn't go across, that's okay. Goes over here on your scapula, runs down, attaches down in here. So your deltoid muscle, I want you to visualize a string here, is like the puppet string that raises your arm laterally to the side. Your arm won't go to the side unless I pull down here. This is where the insertion is. How many of you have taken anatomy? Is it a nat phys or just anatomy? Did you work on a cadaver? So I don't know if Boise State still does this, but we used to have cadavers in the Bronco gym. I got to study on a cadaver. It was the coolest shit ever. I don't think they do that anymore. I don't know why, but when you see the muscles, they literally are what moves your bones around. Like the strings. So when I look at someone's posture, I can see what muscles are not working. So if I have my feet turned out like this, there's muscles that are not working. And then that makes my knees prone to a lot of problems. So external rotation, I'm overusing my gluteus medius, piriformis. I'm underutilizing my hip flexors. Internal rotators, right? So if my if my feet are turned out, my hips are gonna press forward because I don't have the stability here. So now I'm swaying my back to try to maintain a vertical alignment. So when I watch clients, I look at their posture when I see them, I can see what's tight, what's not working. So I would take someone like this, and the first thing they go is like, oh, I'm so sore right now. Well, of course, because you're leveraging all your weight. So we need to stretch these out. We're gonna do deadlifts, right? We're gonna do deadlifts, bent and straight leg. And then, but I'm gonna make sure we work your hip flexors. So we're gonna do hip flexor work. More lunges, single leg lunges, close leg press. Right? I'm gonna have you hold the ball with your knees so there's internal rotation. And then what happens is their body starts to be more in line as they become more aware. So knowing posture really helps you work your muscles, especially in the gym. Because it makes it functional. It makes it so that it actually can improve your life versus like, look at my swole biceps. What are your swole biceps gonna do for your knee health? Or the fact that your lower back is all erect because you toe out, because you sit too much. Right? Sit too much, toes out. That's what that's a sign of. So being able to look at those muscles and work them prevents damage for you. And being able to know that is that super valuable knowledge of how the muscles work. So when you work your muscles, you work their endurance. So the ability to continue to do activity for longer periods of time. And when we're talking about strength training, your ability to tolerate higher levels of lactic acid, recovery faster from weight training. And of course, this is where I started with improved posture, decreased joint degeneration. Again, that's assuming you are working the joints through a full range of motion and in balance. The nervous system is ultimately the electrical system. My muscles won't move my bones unless my brain is sending a signal of electricity. Literally, it's electrical. It's an electricity current, the sodium potassium pump, acetylcholine, all of those things that stimulate the nervous system. Your muscles will not move without it. You can have the muscles. Let's say someone gets in a car accident or some type of accident and gets a spinal cord injury from the hip down. They have all the muscles, they have the bones, they have the nerves, but they're not getting any signal from the brain because it doesn't pass the spinal cord. So the nervous system is extremely important, and exercise does a ton. The speed from the brain to the limb speeds up. You actually get a stronger signal and a faster signal when you exercise. If you stop exercising, those signals get slower. So for example, do you guys, if you ever get a chance to ask your parents or your grandparents or both to stand on one leg, pull the leg up, make sure the leg stays locked, and see how long they can stand there. Can they move their arms out here? So this is, my nervous system is going crazy right now to maintain a center of balance. You guys want to try it? Let's go. Stand up. Pick a leg. I don't care which one, just pick a leg. And this is not a competition. I want you to be curious how long. So as soon as your leg drops, you're done. You have to keep this leg locked. If it bends, you're in trouble. So you need to try it again. Bend, keep the leg locked. Standing leg locked. If the standing knee is bent, that's 3 joints that are moving. You lock the knee, you only have 2. So do you see how that would work mathematically? So now, arms out. Swing. Good job. Arms up. Woo. That make it harder? Reach down. Grab your foot. Keep the leg, it is yoga. Keep the leg straight. Kick your leg out. Pull down.
Head, shoulder to the knee.
Whoa, I'm not quite there yet. Okay, of course I did. This is what yoga does, by the way. Yoga works that nervous system, and there's more to that than just balance, and I didn't even have you do the other side. Chances are your other side is not your default side. You need to use your other side, right? So if I had you do the other one, it might be harder. So the brain, the stamina, the ability, that's all nervous system. Strengthening your muscles, maintaining your joints. Kind of important. Okay, that kicked my ass. So it speeds up your reaction time. So how many of you played in like rivers or streams growing up? Or even lakes? How many of you remember jumping across like rocks and stones to get across? So that is super fast reactivity, that your foot can handle different surfaces without you actually looking at the surface. As you get older, you're going to notice you look at the surface and it's slower. So with exercise, you can maintain the speed and your ability to not have to look down. So you'll notice older people look down at where they're going because it's so slow that they are visually trying to make sure that they have the message going. Whereas we take for granted how fast the brain is working. So reaction time, sense of the body in space. Do you guys know what the word is for this? Anybody know what sense is your body in space? Say it again. Kinesthetic sense. My arm is out here. I don't have to, I'm not looking at it, but I can feel I have the nerves are telling me where it's located, right? That's kinesthetic sense. So body in space, where your body is in space awareness, kinesthetic sense. Oh my God, I got that wrong. No, that's proprioceptive sense. Kinesthetic sense is where your body is in location. So when you go up the stairs, your kinesthetic sense, did I have that right? Will someone look that up? Proprioception is space, body parts in space. Kinesthetic sense is location of body part. Like I can feel my quad, my butt, my glutes. If I dorsiflex my anterior tibialis, I feel it contracting. I'm pretty sure that's kinesthetic. And proprioception is body in space. You think I taught this stuff? I do. Anybody find it?
It says proprioception describes the awareness of posture, movement, and changes in equilibrium and the knowledge and position. And then kinesthetic refers to the ability to perceive the extent, direction, or weight of movement.
Right, so kinesthetic sense, yeah, yes, that's correct. So proprioception is body in space, kinesthetic is location. Both of those are important. When you get older, you lose that, your probability of falling is so super high. Because you don't know your foot's driving. I had a client who was 86, she had hip replacement, knee replacement. And she was so scared of falling. I trained her 4 days a week at her home because her proprioceptive sense and kinesthetic sense were so bad that she didn't know she'd fallen until she hit the ground. She didn't even know that that's what was happening because the messaging was so slow. I mean, at 86, I mean, yeah. But you want to be able to maintain your sense of your body in space as much as you can, especially when it comes to posture. So the ability to know like where your spine is against gravity. So I don't feel this. This is my typical posture. I'm sure you look at it, oh, that looks pretty good. That's actually kind of a little kyphotic, a little head forward, but this is actually neutral. So being able to recognize when these muscles are not working very well would be to my advantage, just so that I even know what that feels like, is kinesthetic sense. Like I know how those muscles feel, and I know where they're from, and I know how to position that. I know how to drop the shoulders. That's kinesthetic sense, right? Where are your shoulders? Are they up north towards your ears? What happens if you pop your chest forward and drop them down? What does that feel like? And the more you get a sense of that, the better. So exercise improves that. And also your functional joint movement patterns. Okay, so I'll go over this briefly. There is a pattern of movement in each movement. That there's a sequence too. And this is really what, when people get into physical therapy, this is super important. Like what aspect of, your gait, your walking, where does it start? In the hip, in the hamstring? There, what goes first? So you get what's called dysfunctional movement patterns. And you're prone to have problems. So for example, how many of you weight train do a seated row? You all should say yes. The goal would be that you all do rows. So rowing is really important for thoracic extension. Your thorax is the rib cage area, right? So flexion, extension. So when you do rowing, a faulty movement pattern would be pulling up from the traps before you pull. So from a front view, the traps are here, pulling up into the traps and then pulling. That's a faulty movement pattern. A proper movement pattern would be extension of the ribs and then a pull, right? And my traps are kicked in here on the reach. And then my rhomboids kick in, my mid traps kick in, right? From the side view, there should be a thoracic extension right there. And then you get here with the rib lift. So if you look like this, you're training a faulty movement pattern. Should be this. Try it out next time you guys go. The immune system. Let me see how much longer more I have. Okay, I gotta speed up. I'm gonna go a lot faster through this. So your immune system, essentially, you can see includes a lot of different things. Getting rid of toxins, moving toxins through the system. But also producing, agents that help get rid of viruses, right? Help your body recover from illness. Even exercise can be really hard on your body. I don't know if you knew this, but high intense exercise produces a lot of free radicals. And it stimulates with muscle damage, an incredible amount of inflammation. It also has the ability to counteract that, but having a healthy immune system means that you recover from high intensity exercise faster than someone who doesn't. Do you want me to say that again? Exercise produces a lot of free radicals. Free radicals are connected to cancers and diseases, right? High intensity exercise produces a very high amount of free radicals, as well as inflammatory agents. If you have a robust immune system, it can handle it. So by having a compromised immune system, you're more likely to have pain, joint pain, muscle pain after exercise. Ultimately, when you do exercise, your body improves it has the ability to compensate. You should probably also take some type of multivitamin. So exercise pumps your lymphatic system, boosts your immune response, reduces inflammatory markers afterwards. Unless you are, this one right here, this is unless. This is occurring if you are in shape and doing what's within your shape. If you are trying to get stronger or faster, that's not true. You actually are more inclined because of how sore you are. Does reduce your risk of cancer, and there's probably a lot of reasons why. Someone who's sedentary might be more depressed, might have a job that sits, might not have social activity. You can imagine that being sedentary has a lot more to it than just you being in a vacuum, not exercising. This is kind of it makes you think that there's not, it's just being sedentary is causing problems. There's probably a lot of other factors that would promote being sedentary, that would promote probably a high degree of inflammation and free radicals that would promote cancer. Mental health, improves physical confidence. This is a fact. Physical confidence meaning that your body you feel that you can learn a new activity. That's what that is. That's not, I feel good about the way I look. That's body image, right? Physical confidence is, I can learn something new. I can try this. I can try it. Even if I suck at it, I have confidence that my body can handle it and grow and get better. That's confidence in your body, or physical self-efficacy. Feedback for fight response. So the mental health aspect of exercise is the fact that if you actually go out and do something physically taxing, your brain will respond as if you did the fight and you did the fleeing. So it can actually be very calming to your nervous system. Increasing your sense of accomplishment, just feeling like you could do something challenging. This is a big part of self-esteem and self-competence. Being able to feel good about your body and space can be really helpful for, again, feeling competent in your physical ability. Improve your cognition, we've already talked about that. And it also improves dementia and Alzheimer's, which is a big deal. You know, physical activity challenges your brain. It literally challenges your brain, especially when you do things that are, for example, let's say a lunge. Right and left side are doing totally two different things, right? So this one's having to lengthen and balance. This one's having to go into the hip socket, right? And taking the weight from my quad. So just doing split work is good for your brain. Jump rope, we'll get more into jump rope, is so good for your brain. Improve your stress tolerance. All bodies need regular physical activity. Find what works for your body and your circumstances. This right here is really important. I finished last week's class with, if you think if you think your one way is the best way, no. You need like a lot of different ways, because as life changes for you, as you start to work, as you start to have financial stress, you might not be able to afford a gym. You might not be living in an area that you feel safe to go out, go for a run. You don't know what might be challenging you. Let's just say one of your parents gets sick, right? And you can't exercise because you're taking care of them. So it's really important you give yourself the lenience and grace to figure something out, okay? Exercise is a physical need, like brushing your teeth, especially when you're stressed. If you have the energy, depending on the type of stress, do something. So we're going to talk about different fight or flight response and what's appropriate. And what are you going to do when you work full time? What are you going to do if you have children that need your time? You have to get them up. You got to get them dressed. You got to take them to school. You got to get them from school. So any of your free time might be gone. What if they have a parent-teacher conference and you can't take them to school? I mean, you're not even in that phase of your life yet where all of your free time is now devoted to other people in your life. What happens when you need to help an ailing family member? You have pets that need to be taken care of. Like me, I don't have the option of really doing what I want because I'm really focused on making sure they get what they need. And I get activity, but I also have back pain because of it. What are you going to do if you lose your job? All of you here are going to experience it, honestly, in a lifetime, stress from job loss. It's going to happen. It might happen a lot of different times. right? How are you gonna be able to afford a lifestyle that requires money? If your fitness requires money, you're gonna have to find a way to do it. YouTube is a great asset for, let's say, doing stuff at home if you needed to, like a yoga workout if you wanted to do it, throwing that out there. What do you do when there's serious illness or catastrophic injury? How are you gonna relate to exercise, especially those of you who are like, I make it work no matter what. What are you gonna do if you get an injury to where you cannot do what that is no matter what? What are you going to do? How are you gonna handle that? How do you relate to your body and your sense of self with fitness? You gotta think about it. Or when life is super stressful, that exercise actually seems overwhelming. Have any of you guys felt that way before? Where exercise is too much, you cannot do it. That's a lot of stress. You will all experience this. You will remember, oh, that one professor, she was so weird. She told me this, I remember. Your life is not gonna always make exercise a priority. It's not. So get real with the fact that life is dynamic. It is hard. Life is hardship built in. This is the beauty of life, is that with hardship, you really get to know ease. Right? So as you guys go into the real world and experience, if you haven't already, real hardship financially, work, time, stress loads, being able to pay your bills. The amount of energy you have gets devoted to those things. And you might not have the same amount of energy to devote to exercise. Don't feel bad. Just don't. For those of you who are creating a relationship with exercise with the privileges of having a built-in gym here and not having the degree of stress that you have no idea is coming for you. You might feel bad because you thought, oh, I just exercise, I make it a priority. That's because it's important to me. And why can't everybody else do that? Look, ladies, sons of bitches. I mean, that is just you not knowing reality yet. When you get into reality, be kind, because it's not easy to do this. So you adapt. How can we adapt? Well, find exercise that does not add more stress to you. So if your ideal exercise is like high intensity cardio, heavy lifting, heavy training, lots of supplements, you have all the luxuries, right? If that is just know that's ideal, okay? That's your 10. If the world is easy, you can get all that in. You got your cardio, your weight training, you got yoga, you're doing Pilates, you're doing all the things, right? Jiu-jitsu. That's a 10. So find a 5. What is a 5, right? Adapt to that. So something to do with your stress. If you're angry, pump some iron. Use it. Your nervous system is primed to do labor. So take advantage of it. You're going to get some serious gains if there is a degree of anger. If you're already mad, go pump some iron. Trust me, try it out. You're going to feel better. Let's try it. Of course, know yourself. This is a generalized recommendation. If you're anxious, meaning fear of something in the future, anxiety, again, fear that this might happen in the future, do something that's more high intensity, like this type of training, getting into a cycling class. How many of you have done a cycling class? It's fun, music, energy, get some of that flight energy out, right? Let's say you are tired. You're tired, this is a really common thing for people. They are tired just from the brain work of labor and work, tired from stress, tired from picking the kids up, going to the work, dropping them back off, going to get the food, doing the laundry, cleaning the floors, whatever life brings to you. If you're tired, find something, again, that doesn't feel exhausting. You're more likely to do it. So matching it with something like yoga, where you are still in self-care, you're working on your joint health, you're working on balance, but it's not super high stress, like a cycling class or, pumping iron. Again, know yourself, but having the option is good. Let's say you are super stressed. You're thinking, you have things to process, go for a walk. Just get your shoes on and go outside. Even if the weather's shitty, if it's rainy, put a coat on. This will make a difference, just going outside, go outside if you're stressed. Breathing natural air, just getting into the sun can often help. But notice this is low stress, right? Just going for a walk. So you're trying to match it. If you are super stressed, your whole system might not have room for more intense activity. So go for a walk, even if it's at night. Sometimes the best walks are at night. I don't know if you're safe. Of course, you need to be field safe. Take a friend if you can. But the evening walks can be really clearing for your mind. Bored. If you are bored, find something that engages your mind. This is a perfect example. How many of you boulder or rock climb? Would you agree with this statement? If you're bored, do something that makes you tinker a little bit, that you have to think a little bit more about. This can also be very good for stress. Like walking, where you can process. If you're really good at it, it's a little bit easier, like walking for some people. Let's say you're needing friends. Find a community sport. You do not have to be very good. How many of you play rec league something in here? Would you agree with this? Social engagement. You at least, and this can happen your whole life. So having a hard time, start small. So oftentimes people overreach. They are like, I want to run a marathon. Don't start there unless you've done it before. Don't do it. Just start with, I need to accumulate 150 to 300 minutes of activity every week. Start within reach. If you overreach, your probability of all or nothing is really high, which means you're going to go gangbusters. I'm going to do 5 days a week at the highest pace. Chances are you're going to quit when you're too stressed about something different. So finding something within reach is really important. So small steps. So this kind of gets into the SMART goals. How many of you learn SMART goals, whether high school or here? I have to go over this information. I have 3 minutes. Be specific. It helps to be specific. What do you want to do physically? And I always go with be specific about what you're lacking. If you're not getting enough activity in general, just be specific around 20 minutes a day. I will walk around the green belt and back once a day. I don't know. Find something very specific, and it needs to be measurable. So something like touch my toes without bending my knees for 30 seconds. That might not be within reach though. How many of you can touch your toes without bending your knees? How many of you do that and it hurts your lower back? Try it. Stand up. Just for your own shits and giggles. Keep the knees bent. Now, do you feel that in your lower back at all? Now bend the knees. Different? Straighten the knees, bend the knees. It's good to do both bent knees and straight knees. Anyway, so that's pretty specific. 30 seconds. Simple, specific, measurable. Action oriented. So I'm going to find a YouTube video and do a 10-minute back yoga video once a week. Be nice if you did it twice a week or 3 times a week, but start with what is realistic. And that's the end, realistic. Attend one yoga class or do a yoga class once a week. Look at me, you think I wrote this. And time oriented. So these are SMART goals. I'll go over these more later. And then the FIT principles. How many of you know the FIT principles? Frequency, intensity, time, type. Frequency, intensity, time, type. You have to memorize this. Because this is a big part of helping other people. I think we are about done. Okay, we're almost done. One more minute. Be aware when your goals are based on trying to compensate for wanting to feel worthy of love and inclusion. Let's just start with that. Now that you guys kind of know what I'm saying here, right? If your physical goal is because you want to feel better about your worth, no, that's what you're doing ahead of time. Just be very aware that your physical goal is trying to get your body to fulfill an emotional need. Be aware you're doing it before you do it. That's good advice, or just don't connect the two. These should not be connected. This should not be connected to your self-worth. If it is, contemplate. If you can disconnect those two. Another way to think of this, and then I'll be done. When I think about my activity, I think in 5 years. What do I want to be able to say I've done in 5 years? So I do yoga once a week. I do Bikram yoga. I weight train. I try on average once a week, even if it's accumulative. And I try to be active every day. I kind of don't have a choice with dogs. So those things in 5 years, I want to be able to say I did yoga once a week for 5 years. That's a lot to do to make a big impact on your body. If you cannot sustain it for 5 years, just thinking about it in your mind, you're probably not gonna be able to do it. So think of what you can do at minimum for 5 years straight. That's gonna be reachable. Okay, we'll see you guys on Wednesday. Don't forget to sign in.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, perfect. Oh, did I not write it in?
Oh, only one of them, I think. Thank you. I'm better now.
Oh, good. Good. Well, there you tried going around.
Well, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I hit it, so they can.
That's not reason. That's why the silver lining of COVID, we have all this available. So thank you so much. Yeah, no problem. Have a good day.
If you have a few minutes.
Yes, I do.
I forgot to remind you.
I'm totally, I remember, just give me a moment.
Sweet.
Oh, let me get all the.
It doesn't bring.